Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes, DM-only live stream, Crafting Annihilation, in which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you are playing characters Mannix, Kaless, Gillian, George, or Theron, this series is not meant for you. The series meant for you is on Friday. The rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. Catch up on previous episodes on my YouTube page, as well as read weekly session write-ups at roguewatson.com. If you'd like to support my channel, go to patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, Richard, and Joe, and Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, and Pretty Boy and Yuma. Thank you all for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Hello to everyone in the chat. I see you. Pat, Leonardo, Eddie, Juicy, /RPG Papercrafts. Hello all. So let's see. What happened last week? We got to Camp Righteous. Finally. Got somewhere. My thoughts on the Hex Crawl. I don't want to skip it, but I'm not... Let's go to the... my map. I'm not into random encounters for random encounters' sake. Like, I want them to be meaningful in some way, which is why I want to prepare my random encounters ahead of time instead of literally, like, just rolling them and having them random and just, like, you know, a randomly generated dungeon, essentially. Like, you turn a corner and it's a goblin, wah! I want to create... in theory, have all of these encounters mean something, and sometimes that meaning can just be, you know, establishing that the jungle is dangerous, that kind of thing. And we had already gone through a lot of kind of straightforward combat encounters with beasts 2 weeks ago. So this time I kind of played around with doing not so much hostile encounters, but still kind of interesting encounters, hopefully interesting encounters, that would flavor Chult even more. Like the Flying Monkeys encounter was not really meant to be combat at all, but showcases the fact that there are, you know, creatures out there that aren't really designed to kill you, but they're very they are very cute, but also very annoying. Like they're like pests, essentially. Although the way Kaless dealt with the flying monkey is hilarious. That's a good example of how this session was. There wasn't a whole lot going on, but the players made it really, really fun in all of these scenarios, which I'm very blessed to have an awesome group of friends to play with, and that can make that kind of thing really, really fun. And like that goblin encounter, and I had kind of talked about this a lot during last week's Crafting Annihilation, but how I wanted to do this explorers, like, you know, fleeing from the goblins, and if I wanted that to be, you know, I even was like halfway into like making this big elaborate backstory about who these explorers were and all this, and I kind of just scrapped all that at the last minute because the party already has a lot going on. They already have a big group of NPCs, and I really didn't want more NPCs to join the party. So I just made it a cutscene where they all die. And just to kind of showcase that there are goblins in the jungle and that they're dangerous. Like, they just cut down people, and then my players, of course, try to loot them. Which, by the way, that was a perfectly valid tactic. Kaless was able to get to one, and I had her straight up roll a D100, and I looked on the, whatever that treasure drop table is, and unfortunately, if it has a 50% chance of getting nothing, which I think that party was very disappointed, because like, it's like, oh, it's a D100 on a treasure drop table, this is exciting. Well, turns out, there it is, treasure drops table. Yeah, you can see right here, if you roll anywhere from a 1 to a 50, it's nothing. So you're meant to find, I think, more of these treasure drops, but it's one of those where, like, for example, playing Darkest Dungeon right now in my Let's Play series, you, like, open a pack, and, like, the pack contains no loot. You know, it's just kind of disappointing, but hopefully we end up with a lot more of these drops. Zaka's transformation encounter in George saving the Almirage was awesome. It was awesome. That's going to be some inspiration for the party. I just skipped that, didn't I? That was the first encounter we had. So that was also a neat idea, is I literally, my first role was to have these flying snakes come in at the campsite and have the Almirage there. And I scrapped that because, again, we'd had several fights with beasts already, so I didn't feel like I needed to keep on repeating that, even though the nighttime encounter could have made it slightly more interesting. So instead I wanted to use Azaka, and I didn't want to draw out her transformation too much because I wasn't sure the best method of how to use it, and she's so powerful. I really wanted to get the idea across, and I kind of messed things up a little bit with the fight against the Deinonychus in that I showed that she was getting like bloodied and hurt, and I'd completely forgotten just straight up that lycanthropes are immune to normal damage, which still seems crazy to me. Immune to non-magical, non-silver. So technically she'd taken no damage. So instead I flavored it basically like Wolverine. Like she kind of gets hurt, but like it heals basically instantly. So it does no damage. Yeah, yeah, that's true. If you recall on Roll20, which, as you recall, I thought I ruined it the week before because I attacked with her and it said like humanoid or hybrid only, and my players, for whatever reason, they said they didn't actually notice that. So I thought I had messed it up because I clicked on that and Roll20 didn't hide that fact. And I don't. That's not really Roll20's fault. That's more of a story thing, is the fact that she's technically supposed to hide her lycanthropy, but her stat block still shows all of the lycanthropy stuff. So I should have done a better job of prepping that and been like, okay, I need to just duplicate this stat block and make sure I have just a full humanoid that happens to have like really fucking good stats. Um, and I thought I had covered my bases with the tiger, but unfortunately, yeah, I did say Azaka Stormfang on there. But I didn't necessarily, and my players picked up on that pretty quick, and I kind of telegraphed it like she, wanders off and has something happen, and then the tiger appears. And the one thing that I needed to telegraph, and I did this kind of in an obvious way, was the fact that you can't really fight her because she's got that damage immunity. So I did that by having the full moon. I did, like when Kales tried to attack, had a really strong attack, and I didn't really want to just, I didn't want to say like, oh, your attack does nothing. Like that's shitty. So instead, I tried to explain like, okay, well, the light of the full moon like heals the wound and all this kind of bullshit. And to Kales's credit, she picked up immediately. She like dropped her weapon and then went into like persuasion mode, which I really liked that from a DM standpoint. I'm like, okay, this is 100% the right way to handle this. You guys. So yeah, George went up and saved the Almirage, which was hilarious. Everybody else is still kind of waking up. Mannix is like setting a trap out. Like I liked the way my players dealt with this situation, and if I like the way my players are dealing with the situation, then I want to reward them by not having this were-tiger go ham on them. So I immediately and thankfully Kales rolled really well on I think it was a double crit, wasn't it? Like there was let's see if I can scroll up. Let's check the tape. Yeah, look at that. I actually had to roll animal handling. Double crit because of advantage. Which and I know technically you don't actually crit on skill checks with D&D, but still that's pretty awesome. So she was able to just completely uh, basically talk Azaka down, and I flavored it where the lycanthropes, you just completely lose yourself to your bestial instinct. You become basically that beast. I didn't. I couldn't decide if I wanted to put her in were-tiger form or tiger form. I put her in tiger form because I feel like that would have been a bit more of a mystery. But now I'm wondering. I don't know. I have to come up with my own rules about when do you actually turn into your hybrid form. Then maybe that one will be the one where you try to roll like a save to like if you try to just embrace it like temporarily, like you lose control, but you can turn into your were form. Maybe. And Azaka did mention that it does happen by the light of the full moon, which I don't know what the lunar system is on Toril, but I can just kind of keep that in my pocket whenever I want that to happen. Though probably not too soon after this time. And whenever she gets like super stressed or something. Again, kind of flavoring it like an X-Men mutant thing, where it's their powers manifest kind of during times of duress when they can't really control it very well. So that's kind of how I would flavor it, which hasn't come up yet, where they had like a really nasty situation. At Deinonychus fight probably would have been the closest. But anyway, yeah, that was a really neat encounter. Kind of flavored Azaka. I'm actually in the middle of. I had forgotten to make a quest for Azaka. I need to add that. Let's see. Retrieve Azaka's heirloom. I forgot that that's basically an ongoing quest that she has. What is that picture? There we go. Nope, POTA quest pick. There we go, TOA quest header. So this is how I make my quests. We'll put that in everybody's. Only edited by me. And then we'll just copy and paste some of this. Might be a better way of doing this, but there's a better way of doing basically everything that I do. I'm very appreciative of everybody in the YouTube comments that explains how Roll20 works to me. If I have a reward yet, destination is Firefinger. So that will help that. And source is Zaka Stormfang. A cool ass name. I like this character a lot, and I like that she's got her own quest. And now with that lycanthropy, she's got her own like shit going on. So she is, it's a weird risk reward thing because she is very strong and a capable guide, but at any point she can become a were-tiger and attack your party. So that's definitely a thing. Let's see. Zaka's precious heirloom of Zaka's was stolen by terror folk. Who reside in Firefinger. She claims the heirloom helps suppress her lycanthropy. None of these words. You don't know any of these words that I can't spell? That is how to spell lycanthropy. Not philanthropy. The heirloom does not suppress her philanthropy. She's never been philanthropic. I'll just leave the reward off there for now. The reward used to be a thing I used in Princes more, where it was like they got a specific loot, and that feels very video gamey too. It's like choose between these rewards or something. Alright, so that'll be enough right there. They have a lot of quests, by the way. A lot of quests. So, we made it to Camp Right. Oh, the Mad Monkey Mist was the other thing I want to talk about. That was another example of a non-hostile encounter, but still a dangerous one. And motherfucker Theron has a quest that specifically destroys fog? What the hell? This is your DM not knowing your player's capabilities. I was like slack-jawed. Roll the tape on that, and I was probably like just eyebrows shot up. Alternatively, you destroy fog in a 30-foot cube within range. Motherfucker. You can just destroy that Mad Monkey Mist. I can't believe that. Who takes Creator Destroy Water? So, I let him do it, obviously. You don't want to, you know, shit on your players for picking spells. But I did want to flavor the fact that the others had to then get their boats like nearby to him, and I always had that athletics check with the boat, which hilariously my players are terrible at. They're actually terrible at rowing their boats because they were on the water and this stuff was coming. And Celeste did not do her check very well, and so she had to roll the con save against the Mad Monkey Mist as well as the Tabaxi who were in her rowboat. Now, unfortunately, you know, I thought if your players... Oh, sorry. Sadly surprised. Have your players personal quest? Oh, you want to look at the personal quests? Yeah, they've got... everybody's got a personal quest right now. And what I'm trying to do is also update them as we go, different sessions that have to do with that quest. So anytime somebody does something, which... I don't... Do I need to be more obvious with George? Oh, I probably need to add that one. About the fact, I mean, he knows that, right? That Almirage horn is what he needs? Because I thought that was the funny part, is like he rescued this thing, and I was going to flavor it that maybe just having it in his, having that creature, God, I don't want to make him murder this nice buddy friend. That's so terrible. I'm a big animal fan. I've got Like I've literally got hermit crabs on my right and a toad on my left. I've got dogs and cats. I'm big into animals. I don't want him to murder his buddy. Oh no, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. But he's got an Almirage now. Yeah, I guess. But we're not keeping track of rations. So I don't know. I thought it was funny that he had that. Anyway, um, unfortunately, Kales rolled a 97. And I was hoping that the long-term madness would be a fun thing to roleplay. Well, if you roll like a 95 or above, your character fucking falls unconscious for days. And that's pretty shitty, and I felt really bad about that. Now, I want to try to work with it. I think it could be some fun opportunities. I'm going to try to do that, but technically, she is unconscious for 60 hours. That's 2.5 days, and she just dropped unconscious when they reached Camp Righteous. Whereas the Tabaxi rolled, they also failed, and they both rolled, I think, basically the same one, which was to become like obsessed with a lucky charm, either a person or a thing. And if you're apart from that thing more than 30 feet, then you have all these disadvantages. And I'm flavoring it, and that was an easy one. So I'm flavoring it that they're just like super obsessed with each other. I don't know if anybody watches Bob's Burgers, the animated TV show, but they have these two like kid siblings who are like really creepily like attached to one another. And that's kind of how I'm going to flavor these Tabaxi for the next like 100 hours or something. It's like literally just for the next couple days they're going to be like to the detriment that they basically won't do anything other than like hang on to each other like physically and just fawn over each other. But yeah, poor Kales is unconscious, which brings us to Camp Righteous. So the fact that she's unconscious I could play with because there are goblins. So the players found this. It was obviously a surprise that there's no Order of the Gauntlet here. I didn't completely spell out the fact that they moved to a new campsite, but I did tease the fact that they did escape somewhere, and Undril is going to be very much like, oh, they're out there somewhere for sure, even though this camp is destroyed. We need to go further upriver, which she is correct in that. The fact that they made Camp Vengeance. So she'll be wanting to do that. However, Azaka's going to be wanting to go to Firefinger. And then on top of that, the goblins are going to definitely be dealing with the players here. Now, this is a really tricky situation because I really can't... I can only plan so much because I'm not sure how the players are going to handle the rest of Camp Righteous because there is this nice, inviting dungeon here. You can see this is what the players actually see. I've got it walled off, so they just see this nifty little cobwebs covering this dungeon. I really want them to do this gauntlet, Death Trap Gauntlet. It's a lot of fun. We prepped it towards the end of last week's Crafting Annihilation, just in case. We haven't gotten to it yet. We ended it as we were kind of still finding the evidence of what happened to the Order. I did tease the fact that, because I thought it was weird that, I don't know, there's just no, I wanted some kind of story information that the players found. Like, in this case, it was a journal of the commander. And, like, well, why is there still treasure in this shrine? Like, why did the Order of the Gauntlet not make it through this shrine and already loot it, since they were fucking camped right outside? So I had to I wanted to include that in the story, the fact that they did try, and somebody even entered it and then never came out, and then they declared, like, okay, this thing is too dangerous, we're just going to have to stay out of it. So I did have to tease the fact that it is a bit of a death trap dungeon, and hopefully my players will take the bait and want to go inside of it. And you can see I've got each section walled off very, very carefully, so that they have to go through each one. It's a really, really fun puzzle that I want, for sure, want my players to experience. I do need to tell the story of House of Man and Crocodile, because otherwise they would have no fucking idea how to actually make it through this Death Trap dungeon correctly. And I think that will be Inet will probably give that. I mean, they have a ton of Chultans with them, so there's no reason why one of them shouldn't have that story. And I think Inet would be the one to say that, being probably the most religiously affiliated of their Chultan NPCs, which is the story of how the crocodile was on man's shoulders, and that's how you're supposed to be able to get through this dungeon, is by having one character literally on the shoulders of another character. And if I'm reading this correctly, none of the traps trigger if that is the case. However, I would argue that the players would you still have to roll a perception check to see this door, because these are ledges right here that the players have to climb over. Also, there is a skill check involved in climbing up the ledges if you have, what is it, a DC 15 athletics check to make it up the ledge while still having the person on their shoulders. And if they fail it, they can either fall backwards apart and thus trigger the trap, or fall forwards apart and thus trigger a trap, which is hilarious. They have to be able to then roll a perception check to see over the ledge and even see the which ones are glowing up here. And I would have it, you have to roll, I believe, each time. Let's see, where's puzzle? If someone can see the area of the door, the glow is so faint, a successful perception check is needed to notice it. So the question is, do I want to just let them roll one perception check to see all four? Or do I want to have, I think, one glow at a time? I think I really want to be devious with this one. Have you roll a perception check to notice each one that glows, and only the top person can roll it, and then you're on there. Now, I would allow you to do trial and error. It's not like the trap reset, so I would, if they can't see it with that perception check, they could roll a 1d4 and step on one, and it would be, you take that damage, and then you would know that that one's not it, so you could roll 1d3 and so on, and it would be like you would get that one. The highest number would just let you do it. So you could brute force your way through this puzzle at least. But this one does seem a bit of a Death Trap dungeon. I am going to replace the alchemy jug because I don't think that's very useful for this campaign that we're not tracking water or food in, really. I'm going to replace that with the ointment, which I think I've already added that. Magic items. Nothing against the alchemy jug, but I don't think a jar of endless mayonnaise is quite worth the insane amount of damage and terror they have to face to get to it. I think I renamed it Ubtau's. There we go. Ubtau's Restorative Ointment, which I've flavored it as having 4 doses, and it heals 2d8 plus 2. So literally it is a bigger than health potion and has several health potions in it. So that's a really good item. And I'm going to give them the gloves of something and something. Swimming and climbing, I believe. That's another non-combat item, but could still... It does require attunement, but it gives you a +5 bonus to athletics checks made to climb or swim, which seems like it could come in very handy throughout the entire rest of the campaign, really. There's a lot of opportunities for climbing and swimming. So I'm hoping my players get in here. I don't really have any way to motivate them to go in, other than it's just a dungeon that's welcoming, so hopefully they will want to go in. And then at some point I'll need to spring the trap of the goblins. Let me catch up on the chat. Zaka moving to Firefinger alone. That would be interesting. I would... It feels kind of almost cruel. I feel like the players have... They weren't too mean to her, right? Weren't they pretty... I mean, they were upset that she didn't tell them about her lycanthropy. I feel like their relationship together has been better than, like, the Tabaxi say. They've kind of shit on the Tabaxi, which is kind of funny, but... I don't know. Azaka leaving the party... it depends on how we roleplay things, I think. She would definitely want to go to fire... If what happens here, and the players are just like... And Undril wants to go to Camp Vengeance, and everybody's like, let's go to Camp Vengeance. Or if the goblins do something here and tease... they're going to tease the Iron God nearby, which is Vorn, which the players do have on their map. Maybe they'll want to go there. And Azaka's going to be like, no, we need to go to Firefinger next. I would probably let the players roll a persuasion check to keep her there. Or she would say, start paying me. That would be the other option. Because she's doing this pro bono so that they do that quest. And if she's saying, okay, well, at this point, if we're not going to Firefinger, you need to start paying me, 5 gold a day or something. And I imagine my players are so full of gold, they would probably be fine with paying her. Maybe they would be grumbling about it, but I would say there would be a persuasion check involved. I haven't decided on how difficult, maybe like a 15. But the players could make her stay around just by offering her gold if they fail that persuasion check, which I could definitely see them doing because they're probably going to want her to stick around. What I need to decide is how to use these goblins. So at Camp Righteous, the only real encounter is that there are 2 goblins per player, led by a goblin boss named Yucca. And they want the treasure inside of the shrine. And assuming the players go in and get the treasure, they will then set up an ambush. And I'm using it as a... I'm not even going to roll the stealth check. There's another goblin random encounter that just says if it's a DC 16 perception check for the players to notice it. So unless the players are actively looking for threats, I don't think anybody has a passive perception of 16 or higher. I guess I should check because I always underestimate my players. 14. Mr. 14 Wisdom. That's probably the highest. Oh, geez, George is also a 14. Motherfucker's got a 15 Wisdom? That is a wise turtle. I don't think the ladies have a very good perception. Oh, Mannix, you have a 16? 16? How did you get that high of a perception? You weird character. How on earth does he have a 16 passive perception? He's just really into perception. All right, well, good to know. Well, that's why I check. So, if Mannix is left outside, he could notice the goblins approaching. But I could also see them wanting him to be the one in the shrine. Because the last time I did a little mini death trap dungeon, which was way back in, I think, session like 4, they had that little torture chamber in the ziggurat. His skills proved infinitely useful. He was able to trace the mage and roll his intelligence check. So maybe they'll think, oh, we need Mannix in here to handle these, Indiana Jones style puzzles. Which, stupid rogues and expertise, skill monkey bastards. And I have double rogues I've been dealing with too. On the other hand, he's completely incompetent at. That was so funny. He got. I had a poisonous snake in here as just a random, not even a fight. It was just like an attack, and I rolled a fucking crit. Which, by the way, I don't get a lot of rolls, but the few attack rolls I've had in this campaign have been really, really delicious. Like just really painful. And I rolled a crit on this little poisonous snake, and it nearly kills. But I love the way he roleplayed that, where he just like gets hit by the snake. He's like, "Oh guys, I'm dying here." That was hysterical. It's just funny how like weak he is physically, but mentally he's so strong. And maybe they would want him to do this death trap dungeon, but I don't think any of these they would be incorrect because I don't think his skills. Although I guess with a perception check he can spot the traps, but they would still go off unless they figure out to do the one on top of the other. It actually says 50% chance, but I don't know if I would leave that up to chance. It's a very, very complex, cool. I really want them to do this. I hope they do this. I mean, I would assume if players see an open dungeon in front of them, you got to do it, right? That's like part of the unspoken contract of D&D. You don't skip this kind of content. So I'm hoping they do it, even though I've teased the fact that it is dangerous. So ideally, Mannix will go in there and not be able to spot the goblins coming out. They will probably... They have so many people, I imagine they would just station some people outside. I would like to have the goblins set up a nice ambush to where they'll wait until the players come out with the treasure. If everybody goes inside, that really opens up some opportunities for the goblins to come in and do some off-screen shenanigans like, maybe destroying some of their canoes. I would love to get a chance, for example, to kidnap an unconscious Kaless and take her to Yeliark. That would be amazing and a fun motivation to split the party. I doubt I'll be able to get to do that unless everybody decides to go into the shrine. If they just leave NPCs outside or something. What could be really interesting is if I unleash the goblins while the players are still in the shrine. But I don't know if I want to try to juggle that, because then these guys are dealing with these puzzles while the other side is basically doing either a combat or a, maybe not quite combat, but maybe the goblins are, come through and essentially want them to surrender and then try to set up the ambush. But there's a weird thing where it's like, obviously, if I do that, then it's not a surprise for the people in the shrine. They can metagame it from there, because you can't like have some players leave the room and explain what's going on. So I haven't quite decided how I want to try to use the goblins, and unfortunately, a lot of it is going to depend on how the players deal with the shrine situation, and I'm really going to have to just come up with a plan right then and there on how to use them. But I do have goblins here. The plan is to have them attack. The plan really is for... Yaka's plan is that he wants the treasure inside the shrine, and he wants to give it to his iron god, and that is Vorn, the deactivated shield guardian, which the players know about, and they have a quest to deal with. So maybe that'll help motivate them to go in that direction, because on the map it's pretty close. I would assume the players would not want to hand over the treasure, and that they would instead fight the goblins, which is kind of what I'm hoping for. Is going to be kind of a straightforward. Goblins are not strong at all, but there are a lot of goblins here. Let's see what Kobold Fight Club says. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 goblins and a goblin boss. Let's see here. So we've got 10 goblins and a goblin boss. And I've got 5 players, but one of them is unconscious, so I've got 4 players. But I also have 5 NPCs. Let's take out the Tabaxi, though. Let's say 3 NPCs. So let's go with maybe 7 level 3 players. That is still a hard encounter. Ah! Interesting. That could be interesting. If the players decide to fight a bunch of goblins. Which is the idea. This is meant to be a command counter. Also, Manix, which if they jack with this fledgling Axebeak, it's supposed to summon a bunch of other Axebeaks and just be another combat encounter. But I really think he played this pretty well. Instead of making a contested check, I maybe should have just given him advantage. But even then, his animal handling is so bad. I just kind of wanted him to succeed based on how he was role-playing the situation. And then they were feeding it. And I think Theron actually used his... He might have actually used his last speak with animals. He is, like, out of spell slots now, I believe. No, maybe he didn't. Maybe he just used animal handling. He is out of spell slots, though. I think that Creator Destroy Water dumped him out. I kind of wanted him to succeed, but if the goblins attack and this creature's still around, it is going to squawk in danger, and that is going to summon the other Axebeaks. It's like nearby, so I'm gonna have like a whole another faction emerge like a round later. If all the goblins go on the same turn, they could potentially knock people out. That damn, yeah, the action economy is everything. It's really interesting. It's not something you think about until you've really played D&D and you realize that even the tough, I mean, to an extent, but even the toughest boss monsters, if there's just one of them, it's really, really hard to make that a threat against a party, assuming everything else is about equal. And that's why, like, higher level boss monsters have legendary actions, so they actually get to go, like, more often during a round. So having a lot of little things can be really powerful. Now, that is obviously they are weak against, like, AoE spells. So, for example, Gillian, who I don't think has used a single spell. Rochelle has unfortunately not been around to play with us much lately. But the advantage is, I believe she still has pretty much most of her spells, including Fog Cloud, Thunderwave, and Sleep. So she's got plenty of AoE spells. Sleep would especially be very effective against goblins. So if she stays out here on guard duty, she could actually shut down a lot of these goblins pretty effectively. In fact, what is... Sleep is a 5d8, and it's the hit points. So that is... and goblins have just shit for hit points. So let's do a sample 5d8 and see what that even looks like. 21. That'd be 21 hit points worth of goblins, which would knock out, on average, anywhere from like 3 to 4 goblins with one spell. That's really effective. Or she could obviously Thunder Wave and blast them apart, so she would be pretty instrumental in dealing with them. Assuming, again, she doesn't go in the shrine. So a lot of this, depends on how the players deal with the shrine. But I want to save the goblins for when the party is split and dealing with the shrine, and then either launch the goblin attack then, or wait until the party emerges from the shrine. And this might be a thing where like somebody's knocked unconscious and they have to like retreat from the shrine or not have it or something, and then maybe the goblin, that would be really funny, and the goblins emerge. And I do the Last Crusade thing where they're like, you have to go in or we'll kill you, kind of a thing. That would be pretty funny, but I don't want to do that too early. I want the players to go in the shrine on their own accord and then have the goblins emerge. And they will tease the fact that they want to donate to their Iron God. I'm doing all this prep work because I'm assuming Camp Righteous will basically take us the remainder of, or basically the totality of our next session. Because, again, the shrine is involved in a lot of stuff, this goblin fight. And then if this thing squawks, if it's still around, and it should be, and the goblins attack, then it will freak out and start doing its crying. Which, let me see what that actually shows up. It's, if they attack or harass the bird, it squawks, attracting 5 adult axe beaks, which crash out of the jungle 2 rounds later, ready to fight whatever they meet. So that one says 2 rounds later. Depending on how combat goes, I might even make it 1 round later, but which is weird because in theory that's like 6 seconds. It's weird timing in D&D. But that would be really, really interesting because the axe beaks are not affiliated with the goblins necessarily. They would just crash through and start wrecking shit up. So that could be really, really interesting. I could use that as a way if the goblins are actually like winning the day. If the players are split and the ones in the shrine are fucked up and these guys are having a hard time, like Kaless is unconscious, Tabaxi are kind of shut down. That could be really interesting, and then these axe beaks show up and actually fuck up the goblins a little bit. But again, that's all. I'm not able to prep a lot of this other than just kind of talk about what I want to do, because a lot of this depends on what the players decide to do in this scenario. I would love the chance to kidnap Kaless. I think that would be a really, really fun story mechanic, and I think she would be on board for that, because otherwise she is literally like magically unconscious for 2 days. Which isn't terribly exciting. And unfortunately, they're at a location. It's not like they're traveling and it's just like a random encounter and stuff. This is like meaningful stuff happening. But that would be a really, really fun thing to do if the goblins pick up on this and they're able to move in and like put a knife to her throat, or just like during the combat, like somebody takes her and rushes her off, as an offering or something. I think that could be a really neat scenario. I don't know how much I need to prep outside of Camp Righteous. Let's go back to the map then. And I feel like I've got a lot of the trap stuff prepped as well. I kind of went over it last week, but I think it's going to be a really, really fun opportunity, although a definitely dangerous chance for the players to take a lot of damage. I will also flavor the fact that this is a safe location, even though it is covered in bones and shit and not a great place to rest. They can definitely get a long rest here. That would be the other advantage of making it through this shrine. Although the shrines, I believe the traps reactivate. There's things you can do to maybe shut them down. Like you can go along the ledge here. You can shove things into the walls and do all that. But as long as you carry one on top of the other, and once they know the path to get through the door, for example, and I believe they can kind of enter and exit the shrine without much incident. And then they could use this back area as a safe long rest, which by the time they take all this dungeon and deal with the goblins, they're probably going to want a long rest. And they've been in the jungle for a week. It's been 7 days since they left the city, so that would be kind of good timing as well. So once they reach this back room, I would definitely need to make a note to myself to like, hey, tell them like this would be a safe place for a long rest. Remember, I had this be a crazy night for the party. At night, the goblins kept creeping in and trying to steal stuff, and one of the goblins surrounded. Oh, I forgot that's a thing. The goblins can blow a horn and summon creatures, can't they? If all else fails, the goblins use horns and animal calls to draw the attention of nearby undead or aggressive. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing though, isn't it? Because it says say aggressive beasts, a hungry Allosaurus, and 1d4 plus 1 axe beaks. So I'm kind of using that concept, but the goblins wouldn't blow a horn. It would be this creature would be the horn, the fledgling axebeak, and then would summon extra axebeaks to this fight. Which that's a good example, and something the book has done a good job of. Is saying the fact that don't just be like one encounter, like combine encounters together and make it so the jungle is really alive with different forces. You know, like the goblins are trying to survive against dinosaurs, and obviously everybody's against the undead and all this shit. So I think that's a fun flavoring to the jungle also, is just having these multiple hostile factions, not necessarily just waiting around for the players to interact with, but fighting amongst each other. So that could be a cool bit to add in there, but yeah, I would love to get a chance to kidnap Kaless. The druid could just wild shape into a tiny spider and spider climb through the shrine. He could, but guess what? He's not taking any of those shapes. That's a great point, Leonardo. However, he has done the power gaming thing and literally only taken combat shapes. I asked him at the beginning of the campaign, he's like, all right, you can take 3 of any shapes. Any wild shapes you want, you can have those 3. And he chose direwolf, giant spider, and brown bear. Which, to me, if I were taking druid shapes, I'd be like, all right, give me the combat shape, give me the stealth shape, give me the different ones for certain. He said he took all combat shapes, and essentially all the ones he's been getting are built for combat. He actually laughed about taking the Almirage, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, man, think outside the box with your wild shapes, dude. You can use it to stealth in. An Almirage could just walk into a camp and kind of survey the area. Like, think outside the box, but his character, he flavors that as just being this like power, like this hulking out kind of a thing. So he just does it to gain power and strength. So yes, you're right. That would be an excellent concept, would be to be able to wild shape into any kind of tiny creature. But thankfully for me as a DM, he has not thought to do that. Instead, he has just gone pure combat forms. Which, given that he's the dwarf, he might have duty of riding on top. The shoulders of if they do figure out that's what they need to do, in which case his perception is pretty good, isn't it? Because he's got the wisdom. Yeah, he's got a +4, so he actually would be a pretty good choice to have on top. But that means he's not out here dealing with the goblins. The more I think about this, the more I actually want to unleash the goblins while the players are in the shrine. Just because that would, while the players are set up, I'm thinking like a goblin now. That would be the time for the goblins to strike. Come across dead ones. Cool loot, not perhaps the destiny of insight to dangerous baddies around. Yeah, that's kind of what it with the spit roasted gnome last week that I teased, as well as the goblins just killing people in that cutscene. He can be an Almirage, yes. He did take the Almirage form, but that's what I'm saying. They had to remember they were joking about it, and they were like, "Oh, you can take this form there," and he's like, "Oh, why would I want to do that?" And then he did finally take it, I think, but we had to convince him that was a good idea, and he didn't even want it. And I'm like, dude, take it. He can literally be he actually can't be a crocodile yet. Crocodiles have a swimming speed, and I forget what the druid rule is, but you can't actually morph in. I mean, he did acquire the form. Is it under druid circles? Circle of spores. Oops. I don't know where the oh, these are the new druid ones. I don't need new druids. Circle of the moon, there it is. Oh wait, it's just, this is regular druid, isn't it? That's regular druid rules. Druid, I do love the druids in 5th edition. They're really cool. Where do you list your wild shape rules? There we go. Okay, so at 4th level, you gain the swimming speed forms. And at 8th level, you finally gain flying speed. And he's a moon druid, so he doesn't follow these CR rules. His CR rules are different. So next level, he'll be able to transform into a crocodile as well as any other water forms that he's got. And at 8th, he gets flying, which is huge. Yeah. But I flavored it that he can still learn those shapes. He just can't morph into them until he meets the level requisites for it. Ironically, the next random encounter I rolled for the jungle is goblins, which it's kind of unfortunate to double up on goblins since they're dealing with goblins right now, but that's also very flavorful because this is goblin country, as I have been teasing with my cutscene last session, and obviously with the goblins here, and then with the proximity. The players don't know this, but they are very close in proximity to Yeliark, which is the goblin, Batiri goblin campsite here. It's 3 days travel from Camp Righteous, and I made Vorn. I actually changed it. It was over further to the west, but I made it right here. And that's why the goblins are worshipping it, is because it's so close by to them. So if the players leave, and this is also tricky because I don't know where the players will go after this. I'm assuming Camp Righteous, all the events, again, the shrine, the goblin attack with the axe beaks, all that should take up. That's a big, big combat scenario, and combat always takes a long time in D&D. I think Camp Righteous will take up our entire session tomorrow. I would assume, but just in case, I doubt they would cross the jungle and go to Firefinger here. I would assume they would either go to. I would assume they would want to first follow up with the goblins with Vorn, because Vorn is now the closest thing on their map. And the goblins here, Yucca is going to literally say, like, hey, you need to. The treasure is for the Iron God! Which will be the deactivated Shield Guardian. Which the players know about because Wakanga told them about it, and he wants that Shield Guardian. What the players don't know is that what I'll need to do is create the breadcrumbs from Vorn to Yeliark. So if the players manage to, capture a goblin alive or whatever, they can probably learn the location of Yeliark nearby, or with that second goblin encounter, they could do the same thing. Or if they finally make it to Vorn and really haven't learned anything, then I could really telegraph. Pretty obviously, they can just follow the tracks and then come across Yeliark, which I have not prepped Yeliark at all yet because I don't think we'll make it that far. I'll probably be doing that in next week's Crafting Annihilation. Ran TOA twice. Wow. Yeah, you can move things around. And especially because what's really nice about the Roll20 one is they put most of it on the GM layer, so I can literally just move. Like I just said, I moved Vorn. I think I moved Firefinger slightly. I could move Oralunga closer if I wanted to. Literally any of these locations you see on the GM layer, I can just move around willy-nilly wherever I feel like. But I think they're all in pretty good spots right now. The other option would be if they want to. Undril is going to be very adamant about going to Camp Vengeance. I don't know if she would feel confident in. She would make a pretty stirring argument, but she's also very. She's pretty in tight with the players. I feel like their relationship is pretty good. So she would not be the kind to, like, I could see Azaka wanting to leave on her own for Firefinger, and the players would have to make a check or pay her, whereas Undril would really want to go to Camp Vengeance, but if the players just say, well, let's go check out Vorn first, because it's kind of, not too far out of the way, then she would probably be decently mollified, but she would definitely want to go in that, and I don't think she would have the wherewithal to go by herself to Camp Vengeance, which again, the players aren't quite sure. This is not, we haven't actually unveiled any of the hex crawls here. We've just been following this path, which, interestingly enough, on the original Roll20 players map, this is all open as well. They basically have a path almost all the way to Mambala, and Camp Vengeance is on the map. I had to change and edit all of that because I wanted this to be a surprise. I wanted it to be like they thought Camp Righteous was the place they had to go. Instead, it is a torn-up, destroyed camp with a fucking mini death trap dungeon in there. And then they would have to just kind of guess to continue going on the river until they met up with Camp Vengeance. With Camp Vengeance would finally be the place where the Order of the Gauntlet is, and I also haven't prepped that location yet because I want to do some more cool story stuff in there, including trying to do like a big undead thing. Like I want them to be, we haven't had any undead so far on the river. I don't think I'm gonna have any undead at Camp Righteous unless the players for some reason spend a lot of time in Camp Righteous. But by the time they make it to Camp Vengeance, I definitely want to have the fact that these guys are just holding out against, because goblins aren't going to fuck with a giant like fortified camp like that. In fact, what does Camp Vengeance look like? But the undead definitely would. You could say this place is a lot different than Camp Righteous. It's freaking huge and has all the awesome fortifications. What I really want to do, and something Chris did really well in our last campaign in Storm King's Thunder, is create these big epic siege battles where literally the players are defending the walls against just hordes of monsters coming at them. We had like 2 or 3 scenarios of this happening, and I kind of want to create a similar situation here where the players can go into this basically friendly zone, although there will be some drama inside of here. This reminds me a lot of Hilltop, if anybody watches The Walking Dead, with the giant walls set up. And I want to have it be like this place, while the players are here, it gets like sieged by just a fuck ton of undead and maybe some undead dinosaurs thrown in there for good measure. I think that could be a lot of fun, and the players have to kind of stick around and help do that, and then they can have this be kind of their safe haven where they can also long rest here for sure. Be a good goal. What is the location you are looking forward to the most? That's a damn good question. Location I'm looking forward to the most. Well, it's cheating to say the Tomb of Annihilation. I think... Boy, that's a really good question. I think I like the Wormheart Mine Hrakamar combo. Because I tied that into one of my players, Theron, as well as one of the guides, which that is from the book, Hugh Hackenstone. But I made Hugh Hackenstone like a childhood friend of Theron's, and so they know about Wormheart Mine. I teased the fact that there's a dragon in there, and it's a really cool design. I have it archived right now, so I have to bring it back up. But it's literally got a mine cart that you can take down this like spiraling thing. It looks really good on Roll20 too, and has like a dragon at the bottom of it, and it combines this whole other dungeon. Which is a bunch of fire newts and lava, and just it has a really neat design and flavor to it that feels a lot different than the other jungle stuff. So I like that one a lot, and the players will probably be a lot higher level, and that brings with it, some cool additional challenges, and just the fact that you can fight a dragon is really neat. So I like that location, and I want to make the Jahaka Anchorage a neat location, the pirate base. The players will deal with. And this is all like the second half of their jungle incursion, because they have to go to Orlunga and Nangalore first, get those locations, then go back to Port Nine'Zire, then they get the ship, and they go around. I've talked about this endlessly. So basically when they do that point, I'm really excited, because they can hit up Jahaka Anchorage, Dengwaru, which is a dungeon from the Tortle package on the DM's Guild. I am going to straight up use that entire dungeon, because it's a really neat dungeon. And that is going to be tied into Gillian's backstory. Really in some really cool ways. She'll actually find her brother there, who is a ghost, which is really neat. And then they'll be able to go back down here and hit up Wormheart Mine and Hrakamar. And by then they should probably know the location generally of Omu, so they could probably just take this path to Omu and thereby kind of skip maybe even this entire bottom half of the dungeon, which I would be okay with, because how much hex crawl do you need really? Like, as long as they've done, especially once they've gone to Orlunga and Nangalore, they've pretty much done most of the hex crawling that I would care for. I would think so. There's a lot of really cool locations, I gotta say. Like, I really like this campaign. That's a great question. And I will say the ones that I'm not interested in is probably easier, because Mabala doesn't have much going on there. I mentioned that, and there's no maps. Dungrunglung, I'm not a fan of, and it seems tricky because there's a maze, but it's literally like the old school maze that's you can trace your finger on, which is hard to put on Roll20 and then have your players get lost in when they can literally just move their token around. So that's a weird deal. And then Orlunga is also not even a location. It's just a series of skill checks. And I'm going to replace that with a straight-up dungeon. And I'll go into that later whenever we're getting close to that location. So there are locations that I'm not as big a fan of, but other ones like Yeliark is cool, Nangalore is cool, the Wreck of the Star Goddess is cool, the Heart of Ubtao, which has a lich they can talk to, is cool. Jahaka Anchorage, yeah, all those, Omu, all that is good. Omu and Tomb of Annihilation, obviously, and the Fane and the Night Serpent, all really, really, really cool stuff. But that's, at some point they basically finish their jungle part of the campaign, and just once they enter Omu, they're just doing like a series of basically dungeon crawl, so that'll be exciting as well. Um, but I do like, and Camp Righteous is, I think, that one little death trap. I think it's a really good example of how to like tease out a death trap dungeon like in an early level situation as well, which is that series of gauntlet challenges. So yeah, I've got a goblin encounter, which unfortunately I don't know if they would continue on the river or if they would go on the jungle to get to either. I mean, obviously they go to Camp Vengeance, they would take the river. If I haven't destroyed their canoes. Ooh. Urge to destroy their canoes rising. Again, I'm going to try to do what I can to fuck them up in Camp Righteous, but depending on how the players deal with the shrine and deal with splitting the party and putting people on guard duty, that could put a hindrance in my plans, even though my plans are just to hinder them. So it depends on how well the players prepare there. But like the best case scenario, like I kidnap Celeste and take the canoes and leave, and the players are just kind of fucked, and they have to like chase after her. That would be amazing. But I don't think I'll be able to get that off because the players have so many NPCs and the shrine is so tiny that even if they all wanted to go in there, it's kind of prohibitive to have everybody go into that shrine. But I do have a goblin encounter set up for both the jungle river and I think regular jungle. So I've got kind of a whoa. I didn't mean to zoom out that far. Ambush situation here with some goblins on the river if they want to take the river or if they want to go on the, which unfortunately roll 20, I have to prep story stuff and like maps and tokens. I actually have not put them on this map yet. I have to add a bunch of gobos. Let me just copy and paste the goblins from Camp Righteous. Camp Vengeance was my favorite. Really? Camp Vengeance? Boy, I wouldn't think that. Camp Vengeance as written in the book seems really kind of boring and lame. So if I mean a DM would be able to do fun things with it, which is what I'm going to try to do. But like as written, I don't think Camp Vengeance has much going on. It's a location that prompted one of my players to take the Dungeon Delver feat. Ooh, that would be a good feat. I forgot what that feat does, but do I actually have feats on here? Let's see. Dungeon Delver. It is on here. Good job, Roll20. Remind me what that does. You have advantage on perception and investigation checks for secret doors. Advantage on saving throws made to avoid or resist traps. Boy, that's... yeah, and resistance to traps. That's fantastic. Everybody should take that. Boy, and I reviewed Dungeon of the Mad Mage, my latest Roll20 review. That would also be a fantastic feat to take. Jeez. Feats are good. Feats are very good. Feats are good, but I'm glad they're actually like an optional variant in 5th edition because that's kind of what made 3rd and then 3.5 and then Pathfinder a little more complicated than what I liked, which is it went really, really just... it catered to like a hardcore build-heavy crowd, which, I mean, is fun. I'm obviously have a huge background in, video games and RPGs and all that shit, so I get really into like, okay, but it got to where you had to like plan your entire character's career from level 1. You had to be like, okay, I gotta have these stats and take these prerequisites and take these feats in this order, and it was very, very prohibitive for like anybody that's not super into that or has that background to be able to jump in and try to do that without gimping your character. So I'm glad they kind of moved away from that, but I do think that cool feats are cool. A coup of the camp. Okay. That could be cool. I think it is written that Niles is kind of a jackass, the commander. And I would definitely flavor it that he has... I would flavor it that he's basically gone, like, kind of insane. Like, this is a... what's the movie? Heart of Darkness kind of a thing, where he's just gone kind of nuts. And even the subordinates are like, we're trying to get by, but... and just we'll say that the commander is just making a string of like wrong decisions, but he is like still the commander, so they're trying to follow his orders, and the players will have to deal with that. So I think Camp Vengeance could be for some fun role playing situations, but what I ultimately want to do is the like siege of giant undead, to bring home the fact that undead are a big problem, and even in this big fortification area, it's a big problem. I don't think I want to necessarily destroy. I don't want to destroy Camp Vengeance though. That I originally had that thought process, but like I know I do want to create like a forward base that the players can actually use. Apocalypse Now, thank you. I think Heart of Darkness might have been what the book that it's based on. Niles' head on a pike. Well, that will do it. Oh my goodness. Undra would not be okay with that. Undra will still order the gauntlet. She might say that, clap him in irons or something if he's really like just lost his marbles, but I don't think she would be nearly okay with an entire coup of the order. Did you have Undril in it at all, Brian? Be curious about that because that is, and the other thing is they will lose Undril in Camp Vengeance. She will opt to stay in Camp Vengeance, so they will lose one of their NPC party members. So that will be a big thing for the players to then deal with, because she's been pretty solid. She's got third level spells, so she's still stronger than any of the players currently. She's a fifth level spellcaster, and very helpful when it comes to casting like Cure Wounds. Even Mass Healing Word, and obviously against zombies, she's been amazing with the Sacred Flame, so losing her will be a bit of a blow, but it will kind of complete that quest line. They're all Flaming Fists in order of the Gauntlet. Oh, that's interesting. Hundra was not okay with it. Yeah. So this was before your wizard left to pursue Lichdom. Interesting. So, as I mentioned, I believe all of our session tomorrow will be all this shit that I've talked about in Camp Righteous. I try to prep what I can just for my own plans, but a lot of this is just going to depend on... Whoa, stop, roll 20, stop. Jeez. Freaking out right there. A lot of this depends on how the players decide to tackle this shrine, and who they decide to put in there, and how damaged they get, and when I decide to unleash the goblins, and then when the axe beaks come, and then can I take advantage of Celeste being unconscious? Can I deal with their canoes? Like, all of this, unfortunately, I can't really script for, because I mean, I've got like, I can do a bunch of if then like programming language type things, but that only gets me so far. And as a DM running a campaign, you really have to be able to just kind of deal with this stuff in the moment. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes tonight. And then my only other thing was to prep in case they actually get as far to leave. Let's copy this many goblins. Then technically they would run into another goblin encounter. Oops, don't need that. In the jungle, either on the river, which weirdly enough the goblin boss doesn't have the short bow the others do, so he's actually weaker on ranged attacks. And I haven't really prepped that at all, but there would be another goblin attack as the players get closer. What is my encounter after that? So that would be the their next, if they actually leave Camp Righteous, whatever step they take next will be goblins. Which I assume is either going to be towards Camp Vengeance or towards Vorn. Because they want to check out that Iron God that Yako's screaming about. Which, I mean, they could still take the river and still go towards Vorn, so it'll probably be a river ambush. Let's see. After that would be 9. Oh, geez. It says UNT. I don't want to do UNT here. Or Yellow Musk Creeper and Zombies. What is that encounter? Yellow Musk Creeper and Zombies. So I'm using the Tomb of Annihilation Travelogue Hex Crawl, which I think I've posted several crafting annihilations ago. I'll go ahead and post that again, even though we're not traveling right now, into the chat, which is here. It's a really, really cool travelogue, and then I believe if you use my seed seed number, then you can actually generate what I'm looking at right now. I've just got it on 51 days to generate. And what I've done is I've basically used that as a template for random encounters, and then basically for the frequency of random encounters, and then I will take a look at whichever one I got, and then I'll just re-roll if I don't like it. So, but we've gone through day 7, got us to Camp Righteous, which is kind of like evening time in Camp Righteous now. Probably by the time they decide to go in the shrine and the goblins attack. And then when they leave, it would be day 8, which would be Goblin. I'm looking at the No Undead. Rivers, I'm looking at both Rivers and No Undead for encounters for right now. And no undead is more goblins, so that seems appropriate rather than introducing grungs here. But then for day 8, it's Yuan Ti, which is not. Wait, what is. No, sorry, day 9. Day 9 is Yuan Ti or Yellow Musk Creeper and Zombies. Which. Is that the. What is that? Characters pass close to a ruin inhabited by 3d6 Yellow Musk Zombies. Zombies might be spread across the area or bunched together. In the heart of the ruin, a Yellow Musk Creeper clings to a crumbling archway or polluted well. Interesting. That's okay. That could be a cool encounter. Zombies, and I could see that being interesting. Just a bunch of zombies. Undead are still a danger here, so I could prep that one as well. Day 10 is another encounter, which is either Sturges or Quippers if they're still in the river. So they go to Camp Vengeance. God, it's a lot of just beasts, though. I'm not getting a lot of the like the story stuff. I worry that it's just too much, just random combat. Blow my nose for a second. Um, Trevor. Yes. Um, Mannix's personal quest is Artis Cimber. Um, I had Zendala join the party in session 2, and she arrived and they actually rescued her from a shipwreck, and she joined the party, and then um, she kind of she left, escaped basically. Mannix did his best to keep her around, but she's after. Um, and in fact, she which I'm sure that we've all forgotten about it, but she actually gave Mannix a sending stone to contact her with. In case they find Artis. I have not decided. He's still in my back pocket. I have not unleashed Artis yet. I'm not sure when to use him. I want to tease 2 things before Artis becomes even an encounter, and that is I want to do the frosty like Ring of Winter in the jungle they find, because that's a fun tease for the Ring of Winter, and then I also want to have the Frost Giant encounter where the players literally encounter Frost Giants looking for Artis Cimber. Which the closer because the Frost Giants would basically be somewhere in this area, so I'd have to, because there's their ship, which again I could move that ship anywhere. I could put them in Kitcher's Inlet, but I want to ideally have the characters probably around the time they're maybe closer to Firefinger dealing with that, or even later on if they go all the way to Needle's Bones and Kirsa Ball, I would have the Frost Giants looking in that direction for Artis Cimber. So I want to have both those encounters first, and then unleash Artis Cimber. And no, I'm not sure where exactly I would use him, or how I would use him. So I'm just having him in my back pocket. But that is a thing I want to use. I think that's really interesting. And that was Mannix's original quest. Was he actually got Zendala came to him and said, "Hey, I'm going to pay you money to find Artis," and then she ended up Mannix ended up finding out where he is, the fact that he's in Chult, and then Zendala took that information, tried to go to Chult herself, got the shipwreck, was rescued by Mannix, and then left again to try to find him on her own instead of sticking with the party. And the reason I did that mainly is because I knew we were already going to have a shit ton of NPCs with the party, and I did not want to add Zendala to it. And Zendala is ridiculously powerful. She is a, like, 9th level spellcaster or some bullshit. So, like, I do not want that character hanging around with the party at all. 5th level. Which, okay, makes her a 9th level spellcaster. So, yeah, I didn't. So, I also have Zendala in my back pocket. So, I could also have Zendala somewhere that could meet up with her. So, I have not prepped any of that yet. But that is still an ongoing thing in my campaign. I'm catching up on your conversation. That's really cool. And this is one of those cool things that it's really interesting to hear about how other people have treated these situations and how they use them. And the book does some interesting stuff where it's like it gives you some ideas. So it's like they could be in the heart of Ubtao as prisoners of the Lich. They could be in Jahaka Anchorage as either prisoners or trying to like save somebody from Jahaka Anchorage, or they could be just anywhere in the jungle, like running from zombies, or some kind of like comedy moment or something. So they give you a lot of different options on how to use him. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, is having artists kind of save the heroes in some way. Kind of do the fun hero thing. He is like a high level adventurer essentially, and freaking Dragonbait is Sorial paladin friend is equally as badass. So I think that could be very very cool. So I think that's pretty much all the prep work I'm looking at for tomorrow's session. It's basically going to be all Camp Righteous. It's going to be all the Shrine. It's going to be the Goblins. And then hopefully we can come away with making that a fun thing that will tease the fact that the Goblins know about Vorn and that they actively like worship this Iron God, which will just be this deactivated Shield Guardian, which will then bring the players to Yeliark and have to deal with even more Goblins, and then get the Shield Guardian amulet from the Queen, which could be very very cool. And then from there, I would assume they would want to go down to try to. Undril would keep saying to go up the river to go to Camp Vengeance would give them another good forward base of operations. But I think that will do it for me. Sorry, Mesro. So thank you to everyone for joining me for Crafting Annihilation. Tune in tomorrow. I'll do my Let's Play for Darkest Dungeon, my next episode, in the afternoon, my time. And then we'll have Tomb of Annihilation tomorrow night, where we will deal with Camp Righteous. I will see you all then. Bye.